Would there be homework at your school?
You know, not so much. Not so much. I think there may be assignments that carry over if people want to work on them. You know, if you're running up hard against a project deadline, you might say, I'm going to have to take some of this stuff home and do it. But I think it's just as important that people have time away from it. One of the things that worries me about, I mean, I'm a kind of advocate of technology in schools, of all sorts of technology, but it does worry me that people don't get enough downtime just to be on their own. See, when I was at school, which was before electricity was invented, as you can probably tell, you know, before running water or gas, but one of the benefits was that when we went home after school, you could forget about it. I mean, we had homework, but you could kind of turn off from it for a bit. And I know that when James and Kate, our kids, were going to school, it wasn't like that so much in high school, because by then everybody had cell phones and there was email and texting, and it's like it just goes on all the time, and it's useful to be able to be in touch with people. I do want to say to people sometimes, just turn it off, you know, because the world will be there when you turn it back on in the morning. But it's this constant kind of having to respond to people, and having to be kind of on, and people coming at you all the time and interrupting you, and you can't get your head clear for a bit. And I think it's a bit of a nuisance, frankly. Don't you?
Yes.
You know, like turn it off. And so I think it's very important people have time to relax, to be with themselves, to do what you want to do. I mean, and some time away from screens, because all that stuff is coming at you. And there are times when it's actually, and of course they're also backlit, so it's something about the energy that's coming off electric screens, which is quite different from like reading a book or spending some time sketching, or perhaps just tinkling on a piano, or playing with a guitar, or just doing something that's coming out of you rather than something that's coming at you. And I think we should have more time in that. And I think there's a kind of obsession now with giving people loads of homework, which is just another way of cramming their brains with things. And don't you feel a lot of people are feeling the pressure of it? Yeah. And if you use your time more effectively during the day, you wouldn't have to do all that stuff. There are better ways of learning than to shoehorn everything into an extended day and then do 3 hours of work when you go home. There's a bigger argument too, by the way, because all this is often in the interest of getting qualifications that don't mean much, really. That's what I think.
He answered some of the questions. Alex?
Oh.
It's the hardest money I ever had to earn anyway.
How would you measure growth and success?
There are lots of, I'm not being evasive, but there are lots of different ways of doing this. I think what we're talking about is assessment. You know, how do you make it, what you're doing, accountable? And I tell you, there was years ago, one of the problems I have with common forms of assessment is they're all about numbers and grades, and they don't really tell you much very often. I remember years ago I was talking to a girl who'd done a 4-year dance program at school, and I said, what did you get out of it? And she said, I got a B. and I thought, well, you must have got something more than that, you know, but that's what you got. But if you said to her, you know, tell me what you learned, you know, about yourself, what you learn about us, she could probably talk for hours. And the trouble with these grades and numbers is they narrow your attention. And so anyone who's in any group of people in the same class will have got all kinds of things out of it, potentially. So I think the emphasis on assessment in schools should be much more on getting people to describe critically what they think they've found out, and not just trying to kind of pitch for a number. So it's very important to assess work, but assessment can be supportive, it can be descriptive, it can be helpful. But you know, if you've just got your head down and think, I've got to get another A, it's become an obsession. I know when I was teaching in England, we had a student from America, and she wrote an essay for me, and I gave her a B for it, and she was mortified. She was crying. And I said, you know, what's up? And she said, what was wrong with my essay? I said, there's nothing wrong with it. But she said, this is the first time I've never got an A in my life. I said, well, get over it. You know, you haven't got one now. And but I didn't just give her the grade. We actually talked about the essay for an hour. So I explained why, because we had to give a grade, you know, for the committees and all that stuff. But there was a reason for it. There were just some things I wanted to talk to. But I think there's become an obsessive thing, often in American education, that if you don't get an A, you failed. And actually, you might get all kinds of things from not succeeding quite as you thought you could. I mean, you often learn most, in a way, when you, so to speak, failed at something. That's how science works. It's how composers work. You find out what doesn't work, and you try something else. So it doesn't. So I think it should be very descriptive, and it should be much more open.
How would you deal with distractions?
What type of distractions do you mean?
Like, I guess, like kids fidgeting in class, or.
I think that one of the reasons people get distracted is because they're bored. Now, let me just say this. That's one reason. But actually, we're all built very differently. Now, I've just finished a new book, which is going to be published in a year, which you're going to have to buy. All right. Because I published a book a couple of years ago called The Element. And people kept asking me how they find their element. So that's what the new book is about. It's called Finding Your Element. And I have a whole section in the book on attitude and temperament. And one of my big arguments is that we're all different. I mean, we have different talents, different abilities, different things excite us. Some people get absolutely turned on. You know, maybe I do photography. Other people think, just take it away. I'm not interested. It's just a natural thing. It's not the thing itself that's boring. It's they're just not interested in it. Human beings are just very different. And one of the ways we're different is our natural temperament. Do you ever look at star signs and things like that? You know, the astrology signs?
Yeah.
I mean, that's based on the idea there are 12 broad sorts of people. I'm a bit sceptical about it, actually. My dad was a Virgo, and he thought it was nonsense. He thought star signs are nonsense. And I used to tell him he would think that because he's a Virgo, because that's what Virgos think. And but there are different ways of describing types. I'm always a bit hesitant because they're very fluid. But one thing about temperament is about the things that excite your interest. I've just done a whole section in the book about it, and there's a 9-point framework that was developed in New York for temperament. But one of the things is about attention span. Some people are naturally easily distracted. It doesn't mean they've got a condition, but their mind's moving around quickly. And I'm a bit like that. I mean, if I'm working on something and somebody else comes in the room, I always look over and see what's going on. Somebody else might just sit there, focused, and ignore that somebody just came in the room. It's not good or bad, it's just different. It's like, you know, some people are excitable and some people are very calm. Some people are extroverted and some people are more introverted. So part of being a good teacher, I think, is to recognize the temperament of the people you're working with. They're not necessarily being rude if they're distracted. They're just their minds work in a different way. I know, for example, I mean, James, my son, is over there. If music starts playing in the background, he picks up on it. And he'll say, do you recognize that tune? I haven't heard it. You know, I haven't just been paying attention to it. My wife, she'll walk into a room and she'll see all the colors in the room. She can remember colors. If we go into a shop, I mean, and we're looking for something, she might remember a color for months and say that'll go exactly with that, you know, throw that we've got in the living room. I say, which throw? No, which living room? You know, what are we talking about? Who are you? You know, I always say, because she's got that memory for it. It's just a difference. So you have to treat it individually. Sometimes people are distracted because they're bored. Sometimes because they're not well. And I think good teachers always look at the particular situation and actually go with it. I mean, sometimes you might say to someone, well, just take a break. Go and run around for a bit and come back. There is a school in England where they are building in regular breaks. You know, rather than sitting everyone down for an hour, they'll study or focus on something for 15 minutes, and then they'll get up for 10 minutes and run around. And what they find is that they're learning much more, remembering much more, because they're You know, we're human beings. We're in bodies. You know, we're not a brain in a jar. You know, we're our bodies with hearts that beat and blood that pumps and all that stuff. And you like to get it and move. So that's what I think.